This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Thursday, September 19th, 2019. My guest is Matt Miller of ZDNet. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yay. And you know what is today? It was Mate 30 launch day.
That's right. Yeah,
and
early this morning.
I don't think, other than a few U.S. media that happened to be near there and, were extended an invitation by going on their own dime, I don't think any of us went. Which is...
Not anybody that I have heard of yet. No.
Yeah. Which is obviously, the result of all the madness that's been going on between Huawei and the U.S. government in the last year. But I'm bummed because I'm a huge fan of their phones, especially the imaging side. And so I want to talk about these devices, but also kind of want to talk about how odd it's been to finally bump into the wall. And the wall being, we have a device here that that is not legally importable, and is not able to run GMS, Google Play services, and all the Google apps.
Right.
So what do you think? I mean, you saw the specs. Like, if you look at it in a vacuum, this phone is awesome, right?
Yeah. The one question I had for you, especially being with your photography background, I bought the P30 Pro, and I love that phone. I was expecting to see the same kind of zoom technology in the Mate 30, but we don't have that, right? Unless I missed something?
No, it looks like, I have to check the specs, but it looks like they might have just limited the zoom to a regular 3 times.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
But the Mate 30 is not their imaging flagship, right? So the Mate 30 is their, think of it like Galaxy S10 versus Note 10, right? The Mate series is like the Note. It's like the everything in the kitchen sink productivity monster. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly. What I have here in front of me are some specs, and it looks like the Mate 30 Pro just improves on the wide angle this time with a 40 megapixel sensor and a really fast aperture of f1.8. But it looks like they didn't want to step on the toes of the P30 Pro because it's a 40 megapixel main camera on either the Mate 30 and Mate 30 Pro, and it's probably the same red, yellow, blue sensor that we saw before, which is really great in low light. So, I mean, it's a great sensor. But notice the f-stop's f1.8. I don't know if the Mate 30 Pro has a faster f-stop, but the f-stop on the P30 Pro is f1.6, I think.
Right.
And also, if you compare the P30 to the P30 Pro, other than the f-stop being different, they have the same main sensor, but the f-stop is different, and one has OIS, the Pro. The other one doesn't. So I'm wondering if it's the same here. Like, I need to dig around and see if there's more information out there. So this is literally, I've only looked in the last hour and I haven't really been able to kind of dig in too deeply. But the big question is, does the Mate 30 Pro have a faster aperture and an OIS a mechanism for the main camera? But we know for a fact that they've bumped the ultra wide to potentially the same 40 megapixel sensor as the main sensor, with a pretty fast 1.8 aperture, which should make for some pretty dramatic low-light, ultra-wide shots.
Yeah, and I saw some initial stuff on Twitter showing a side-by-side with that kind of blew me away. And I like you, I've only had about an hour to process some of the stuff, so I haven't really had the chance to really dive into the details. But
I found a slide from the presentation that shows the Mate 30 Pro. So, yeah, it looks like the main camera is f1.6 OIS 40 megapixel RYYB. The ultra wide is 40 megapixel f1.8, and then the telephoto is the 3 times optical 8 megapixel f2.4 with OIS. So that's basically the same as the P30 non-Pro and the Mate 20 Pro was last year.
Gotcha.
But it has an extra sensor for depth. It has kind of like the P30 Pro has a depth sensor, a time of flight camera.
Right.
This has a dedicated time of flight. But the big news is that you can, if you set video recording to 720p, you can now do slow motion at a ridiculous frame rate, like 70,000 frames per second or something.
Yeah.
Where did I see that? And
Yeah, 7,680 frames per second.
I was saying 17,000. That's ridiculous. 7,680. Right. That's a lot.
I'll have to catch back up on the cover on the live event because they mentioned that it showed a hummingbird in flight, which would be interesting to see that with that lens.
So yeah, I think I just brought up a slide with the specs for the Mate 30 non-Pro, and yes, it's f/1.8, no OIS on the main sensor. So they're doing the same thing as they did with the P30 Pro. And then the telephoto is the same, but the ultra-wide is the old one, the 16 megapixel f/2.2. Old, it's sad to say old because it's on the P30 Pro and the P30 and the Mate 20 Pro. So, yeah. But, I mean, it's interesting actually how they put a flash on there that looks like a xenon, but it's not a xenon. Like it looks like, it's like that elongated
right.
oblong shape. I mean, who uses flashes on their photos these days?
I know. I think Steve was probably hoping there'd be a xenon on there.
Of course he was. That's probably where this rumor started.
Yeah, that's right.
Steve. I just had him on the show about 3 shows ago, and we kind of went over all the state of the art of cameras. So.
Yeah, I've gone to the point of turning the flash off all the time. I told my wife, just turn the flash off. You'll get much better photos now.
Of course.
That, especially with night mode and everything else. So,
people just don't listen to us. That's all. And then you have, did you see the big controversy of the day? Brian Chen at the New York Times telling people they shouldn't upgrade to their iPhone soon, iPhone 11, unless their phone is older than 2014. And that if they want better low light, they should turn on their flash. Worst advice of all time. And why would you write this in an iPhone 11 review? Like, you are writing a review of a phone. Why don't you make a separate article that say, maybe you shouldn't upgrade because XYZ? And that's a fair thing to say, even though I still don't agree on the flash thing.
Right.
Like, come on, an iPhone 6 or 6S or 7 is going to perform as well as an iPhone 11 with the flash turned on all of a sudden? Please.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that's an aside because I just saw that and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. But other than the specs, Kirin 990, we expected that since it was announced at IFA. Mm-hmm. It looks like the Mate 20 Pro is really square, kind of like a Note 10, Note 10 Plus.
Yeah.
And I love to be honest with you, I love this industrial design with the round pod. That's really large. It kind of reminds me of the Lumia 1020. But
exactly. That's the first thing I thought of because that thing is huge. I mean, it's definitely a Lumia.
But it has 4 cameras in it, so I mean, it's allowed to be huge. But we saw the OnePlus posted photos of the 7T, and it looks like a very similar. I mean, the cameras are not laid out the same in the circle, but it's got that big black circular back thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we'll talk about the iPhone 11
to it too.
Yeah, well, Moto's never been that big. Like we're talking 2 inches around here or something. That's big.
Yeah.
What else stood out for you? For me, one of the things that really stood out was that the Mate 20 Pro, I think at least only the Pro, has no volume button and has that waterfall screen, very extreme waterfall screen, like really wrapping around the edges. And like the NEX 3, the NEX 3 from Vivo, that was also a phone we're going to talk about, it has virtual volume buttons. They're basically, you're tapping the screen where there's little icons for the volume keys, which is really weird.
Yeah, I didn't see that about the volume, but I did see the waterfall screen, and I've gone the opposite way. As Samsung moved more and more to having more and more curvature, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
No,
it has good looks, but functionality wise, it's never satisfied me. I have accidental screen presses, or even if not, I mean, you drop your phone, that's a vulnerable spot, too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how these survive over time.
Yeah.
But I mean,
are they just trying to be able to market the screen to body ratio as something that,
Well, I think that's part of it, but I think it looks like China right now with Oppo and Vivo like spearheading this for the last few months of pushing hard, with prototype type phones that they show off. They've been pushing hard on 2 things, right? The under display camera, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And no, I'm not talking about like a hole or a notch, like actually under the OLED display. Right. And of course, the complete crazy screen to body ratios that are even more than 100% in some cases because they're wrapping the screen almost all the way around the edges. And so I expect Huawei to play in that world, right? Because that's kind of where the I'm not sure it's beneficial for the end user though. And Not just for drops. I mean, I think I'm not very accident prone with my phones. I'm sure it'll survive. But it's just that, the Verge's article here clearly states Huawei has ditched the physical volume buttons on the side of the device in favor of a new touch-sensitive solution. And that, I don't like that. Even if it's well done, I don't like it.
That requires more user interaction and, messing around with the phone. When I just want to, if I'm listening to headphones or something, I'll just, either if I don't use the headphones, I'm just pumping up the volume button on the side of the phone, The question
is, did they do that on the Mate 30 or the 30 Pro only? And then there's the 30 RS, right? The Mate 30 RS, which is the Porsche design edition of the Pro, which looks much more square and much more like last year's. By the way, I got to play with that Mate 20 RS last year.
I've always wanted to buy one of those. I just never. I actually thought about last year's. I'm like, I'm gonna just.
It's hard to explain to people why they should spend the money, and I don't think they should ultimately because most of the people we know don't have that kind of budget.
Right.
But if you have the money, if I was one of those baller type people, I would buy that phone in a heartbeat. I played with it. So last year when we did the Mate 20 launch, they took us to London, right? And they took us to Silverstone, the racetrack, and we got to drive around Porsches around the smaller track. And it was all part of that, spend a day with a Porsche design Mate 20 RS. And I have to tell you, Matt, this is amazing. And I just realized I had another Matt on the show last week. It was Matt Swider. I have two Matts in a row here. But the thing that blew my mind is that I thought it was just a pimped up, beautified leather-clad Mate 20 Pro. And it was. Functionally, that's what it is. But when you look at the build quality, the fit and finish, the tolerances, it's a whole new level. It's like, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's like the difference between a OnePlus phone, which is really well made, right? Super tight, super high-end, and like an iPhone 11. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like the iPhone is in a different league. There's just a little more precision there. And that's kind of what the Mate 20 Pro to the Mate 20 RS felt like. And so I have completely kind of turned around my opinion on these RS phones, even though they're outrageously expensive. But if I had the money, I'd get one in red for sure. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're so hot.
And some of those looks of that, right? So I haven't dove into the details. So they look like there was a couple of vegan leather options for the Mate 30. Is that actually a leather backed?
I guess it's vegan leather. It's like the Tesla. It's like my Tesla, like you.
It's been a while since we've had that though.
Well, you can feel good about yourself then or something. I don't know.
I just like the feel of the leather finish.
It's interesting. As a car person who's had many cars with leather and now has a car with vegan leather, I honestly don't have any preference. Like they both feel wonderful to sit in and touch. What I'm finding though is that the vegan leather is a million times more durable. Like most of my, normal cars with leather, after 10, 20,000 miles, you start seeing some, creases and wear marks in the leather. And, even if you condition, you care of it. Of course, it's much better on higher end expensive leather, like if you buy a $100,000 Porsche versus like a $20,000 or let's say a $35,000 Camry with leather. The leather quality is going to be hugely different and it's going to wear much sooner on the Camry. But that vegan leather is just not wearing out at all. Like it's just not showing any signs of wear. It looks as good as it did 15,000 miles ago and 14 months ago when I got my Model 3. It's pretty impressive. So there's something to be said. Maybe vegan leather is the way to go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And of course, with the Mates, we see beautiful colors and design finishes and all that kind of stuff. Oh my
God, yeah. They look amazing.
I know.
The other thing is that waterfall display is only on the Pro, so it doesn't have that on the regular. It looks like the regular might have maybe a less pronounced, more like the
P30 Pro kind of has.
P30 Pro has, or it might not have it at all. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I can't tell from the photos. Battery size of 45 and 4200 milliamp hours. Obviously, nothing to worry about for battery life. We know the Kirin chips are super efficient, so I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
And pricing seems to be
high.
In line. And you think it's high? I think it's kind of in line
it's euros,
with what we
right?
expect.
So,
yeah.
I mean, 1,190 euros for the Mate 30 Pro. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I thought that's what the price
I think it's the 5G model, though.
Oh, that's right. It's the 5G.
Yeah.
So it's 1,099.
Yeah.
And here's my favorite, the Porsche design, 2,095 euros. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of money. I'm not getting that one.
But $799 for the Mate 30 base, 8 gig of RAM, 128 gigs is not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it would translate if they were to ever sell this in the US, it'd probably be $799 US, right?
Right.
Because euros are always kind of inflated.
They're pretty close, yeah.
Compared to us, they include sales tax. So
yeah.
But anyway.
But there's a big question about this whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's
the software.
It doesn't run. They officially said on stage it doesn't run GMS. Google. Yeah. It doesn't have the Google official stamp of approval for the apps and the Play services. So, what does it mean? Does it mean that if you buy the phone, import it, you can then install sideload Google Play services and upgrade from there and get all your apps and get the App Store? Or does it mean that it's just not going to work and you're going to be SOL? Right. That's what that's why I want to review it. That's what I'm really wanting to explore. And, we talked about this earlier a little bit. I hinted at it at the beginning of the show. And I want to make it clear, I think the folks at Huawei are being as, real with us as they can, the U.S. folks. And their PR agencies, I think, are doing a pretty good job at keeping in touch with us, despite the fact that this phone has completely become irrelevant for us politically and also accessible. It's not very useful if we can't use Google Play services. Right. Some people might argue that you can live without Google, but you and I will argue that no, right?
Yeah. And I think it's, just to be clear for some of the listeners too, I mean, there's been talk of Huawei's own proprietary OS and all that, but that's not even this. This is not
Android 10.
Android 10,
EMUI 10. And strangely enough, it's not a fork of Android 10, which is weird because I thought that Google wasn't allowed to supply Android to them. And Android is open source, but this is not ASOP Android 10. This is Android 10. So I'm like, what? I don't understand how they can't get GMS, but they can get Android 10.
That's what confused me, and that's what I really want to see people with some hands-on and see what
that's kind of why I want to review it.
Yeah.
And so, back to the PR folks, again, they're being wonderful. They did invite me to the event. They just said they couldn't cover my travel, unlike the past. So that means that I just couldn't justify going. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping we can get our hands on the device to test some stuff out. And right now, they're very upfront to say we have no idea what's going to be happening, in terms of U.S. reviewers getting devices. And
just being, are they allowed to even bring those around here in the US?
Exactly. I think they're not allowed to import them. So it's a challenge, and I respect them for that. Right. But at the same time, I wish that we had some better answers. And this is the beginning of, as I said, until now, we haven't really felt the effect of this ban and of this, entity list BS. Mm-hmm. But now we are. This is it. This is the beginning. If it turns out we can't do anything to recover Google apps on this phone, that means the P40 next year is going to be completely useless to us. And no, I'm not going to buy a phone or import a phone out of my own money, taking the risk to do that when I know I can't run Google on it, even if the cameras are totally awesome. I'm sorry, folks. It's just not going to happen.
Because then you're just buying it for the camera. Well, then you might as well just buy a camera.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
And Europe, too, right? I mean, this isn't being sold or advertised for being sold. Yeah, because I'm going back to London in a couple of weeks for another business trip, but, I mean, that's not going to be helpful because it's not going to be available there either.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, it's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, I think we should stop lamenting ourselves, and we hope that we
hold on to my P30 Pro.
Yeah, me too. Hope we can get our hands on the devices at some point. And there are other announcements I don't want to get into. There was another watch version 2 of the of their custom OS based watch, which was pretty awesome last year. I felt that notifications were definitely needed a lot of work. But battery life is impressive, and for the kind of things I do with a smartwatch, I don't need something like an Apple Watch. I don't need the level of apps and stuff like that. For me, it's just sleep tracking, step counting, and notifications. For that, I thought it was really great. It was basically a lot like a Huawei Band, but turned cranked up to a watch size. Yeah. And so this new watch, the Watch 2, whatever it's called.
GT, I think.
The Watch GT2 or Watch 2 GT, is definitely going to be interesting. And this is something we can get our hands on. It doesn't run any Google stuff. And it works with iPhones and Android phones, or iOS and Android. So it'll be interesting. They also launched a TV, and I don't even know. I didn't read up on that, so I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So hey, you wrote a story, and I want to kind of segue into it. Some of it is tongue in cheek in that story, of course. But the iPhone 11 versus Note 10 Plus story. 11 reasons I'm buying an Apple iPhone 11 instead of a Samsung Note 10. But I'm kind of curious. In every story there's some truth, right? Yeah. I mean, you're not going to write a story if it's just to get. I know you, and you're not going to write a story just to get page views, right? Articles, so I'm kind of, the iPhone reviews came out. We covered the iPhone extensively with Matt Swider last week. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, we only had a chance to have hands-on, but not reviews. You saw the reviews, so we should cover them a little bit. But I'm kind of wondering if you can give us the gist of what the story is and how you feel about the Note versus the iPhone.
Yeah, I've been a Note user. I think it was Note 3 was the first one I bought, and I have the Note 9. I love the Note 9, and I have a review unit of the Note 10 Plus, and I was definitely thinking about, I'm on the Samsung upgrade program, so it should have been an easy move to just move to the Note 10 Plus, but the more I use it, there's some things about it that don't grab me like my Note 9 did at the time, and with the price and things like that, you really have to think about what you're going to do with the next phone. And so, then I look at the iPhone 10 in my hand, the 10s, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to forget the Note this year and just go for the iPhone. And there's several reasons,
It's a big step.
It is for me, and most people don't make these choices because they're either in one, they're an Android user or an iPhone user. But, those of us who write about this stuff, we can jump around all over the place. So,
true.
There's several things. I mean, I guess there's things on the Note that frustrated me so much that might have pushed me more to wanting the iPhone. Like, I cannot stand and I cannot get the stupid under-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor to be reliable for me at all. And then
as an aside, can I tell you this? I got a ZT Axon 10 Pro. I'm reviewing it right now for Geekspin, and it's an optical fingerprint reader. And it's probably the best I've used yet, which is amazing because the P30 Pro one is pretty great. And the OnePlus 7 Pro one was pretty great.
Exactly.
So this one seems even better than that. And if you compare that with the Note 10 Plus, I got both phones around the same time. And it's just like, it works, the ultrasonic reader, but it's slow. And it's just frustrating.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then when I pick up an iPhone XS, I mean, Face ID to me, it's flawless. It works every time, all the time for me, and I want to see that. And I guess we'll see something of that of the Pixel 4 you talked about, coming up in the future.
Yeah.
So that was one aspect of it, I as beautiful as the Note 10 Plus is in Aura Glow, mine's disgusting all the time. It's terrible.
It's so bad.
And I can't wait till tomorrow my iPhone 11 Pro arrives, and I love that they went with what Google has, right? The matte finish on the glass. And, that'll still show fingerprints, of course, but I don't know. It's a design element that I like better, right? And,
right. Are you going to miss the S Pen? You're obviously, if you're a long-time Note user, that's a big deal.
It is, but it's not. I do use it quite a bit, and that's one thing. If Apple, with the rumors we're going to come out with Apple Pencil support, if that would have happened, it would have been an even more obvious move. Right. I do use the S Pen daily, actually, when I'm using my Note 9, but I'm going to keep my Note 9 around if I really need to use it. So I'm not getting rid of that, but it's a secondary thing. It's not a requirement. So I don't know. There's just. And I know this is going to be probably an old story that people don't care about, but apps, I'm telling you, there's still some things that come to iOS first and that just get done
the
better
apps on iOS is so much better. They are. That's the reality. But for me, the thing that breaks it for me, iOS, every time I use it, is the lack of deep integration with Google services at the native level of the OS and the share sheets. It's just like sharing on the iPhone makes me want to throw. Maybe it's gonna improve on iOS 13, but right now I have an iPhone 10 with iOS 12, whatever it's the latest. So it's a 2-year-old phone, and honestly, it's great still. And But the sharing, I just feel very frustrated that I can't do what I want with the data that's on my phone.
And then actually, you know, I haven't yet obviously tested out the iPhone 11 Pro yet at all. I've seen some of the reviews and things, but I haven't been that impressed with the Samsung camera. You know, I know you've talked in the past about the Note 10 Plus and the camera and things, and it's good, but it's
good,
not
but
great.
It's not like boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I'm a Pixel person, but and of course the P30 Pro, but these are the two for me. Like, and you know, the reviews. So, you know, maybe we can quickly go over this. This is the thing. The takeaway from the reviews. I've linked to the Verge's reviews in show notes here, but you guys can pick any reviews you want. Whoever's listening right now, just go to the web and search for whatever your favorite publication is. Engadget, you know, ZDNet. You guys don't have the reviews yet. I looked.
No, not yet.
To link to.
Jason will have it up pretty soon.
Yeah, the point is that you'll see that unanimously there is this feeling from people I trust that the camera is finally possibly better than the Pixel 3.
Which is a funny thing to say, because in the past the iPhones were always better, but then Android caught up and surpassed them when Google
and so
got in the game.
I'm a little incredulous here. I feel that maybe it's the honeymoon phase, and also the fact that there's 3 cameras, right? Like, it makes a whole, like, 3 on the Pro and 2 on the, and that the 11 has the ultra wide as the second, which is the way you want to do it. Like, it's the only second camera you want.
I agree with that. I was going to ask you a little bit about that, but I agree
I'm totally on board. And it's funny that all of us tech journalists are on board on that one, and we keep having to explain it to like normal mobile users. You know, was it normobs, as somebody in the UK used to call them? I think that was, Anyway, I mean, look, I respect that they don't understand. And, you know, I had a discussion with someone at Burning Man this year about, like, they're pretty tech savvy, and they were totally under the impression that the iPhone still led the pack for imaging. And this is before the iPhone 11 announcement. And I was like, no, like, I showed him photos I took with my Pixel 3 versus their iPhone 8 or whatever they had, and they're kind of blown away. And I'm like, like, this is real. Like, this is happening. And they're like, wow, I can't believe it. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, you can't just buy the hype, you know. It's like, I know you're invested in Apple because you're an iOS user, and I get it, but you know, it doesn't always work out. Every year there's change. And so I'm willing to accept that the iPhone is going to be better. I feel that it's going to last till October 15th when the Pixel 4 is launched, because I'll have 2 cameras, probably an ultra wide and a regular. And I have a feeling that with the super zoom stuff, and what if they put a 48 megapixel IMS 586 sensor in there, right? See, this is my theory, and, you know, we'll see on October 15th, because, oh, by the way, officially it's coming October 15th. The Pixel 4 event is going to be in New York. I'll be there. Right. And here's the thing. My theory is this. This is what Google is going to do. They're obviously going to bring all the goodness we're used to, plus improve and increase the performance, especially of night sight. And I think we're going to see them probably beat the iPhone 11 again. But the way they're going to do it is by having basically 2 cameras like the 11, an ultra wide and a regular. But I think the regular is going to be built around this incredible sensor that's been around for a while now that the OnePlus 7 Pro is using, called the IMX586 from Sony. It's a 48 megapixel sensor, does pixel binning, quad Bayer. So it basically 4-in-1 pixels for larger pixel sizes. And so in low light, you can get that 4-in-1. Like you get incredible performance, but in normal light you can now zoom up to 48 megapixels and do some clever, on top of that, some clever super zoom stuff that the Pixel 3 is doing. I think it won't need a telephoto. That's my hunch. Yeah. And because it's going to rely heavily on computational photography. So,
and Google's already shown that's where they excel in. I mean, with a single lens, what they could do with computational photography.
So let's see what happens. So. But the ultra wide is necessary, and I'm glad they're going to have it. And you know, we'll see what happens. But have you seen
any pictures yet from anybody for night mode comparisons on the iPhone? I haven't.
Oh yeah, I have. It definitely is. It definitely does seem to be at least on par. If it's sometimes maybe better and sometimes maybe worse. Okay. But it's definitely caught up. It's absolutely a whole different story than the iPhone 10s, 10R were.
Okay, because I know Samsung's tried it and OnePlus has tried it, and nobody's been able to match yet what Google
P30 is really Huawei is really the only game in town that can match it. The thing that's interesting is that new sensor that the P30 is using, the 40 megapixel RYYB sensor, is able to do that without activating night mode.
bright
Like
night mode,
it can
yeah.
just capture that much data in low light. It's kind of insane.
Right.
That's what I remember when I first got my P30 Pro. Was like I was taking photos in auto mode that were as good as night sight on the Pixel 3.
So if the camera in the iPhone is really as good as what we're seeing here, I mean, have you ever used an iPhone as your main device?
I have briefly used an iPhone 6 Plus as my main phone.
Okay.
And it was Apple who convinced me to do the switch back when I was still in their good graces. Not that I'm in their bad graces, but now I'm not as important. This was
Right,
back in my
right.
Engadget days. And they told me, I said, Miriam, we know you're a big Android fan and we respect that, but we really think you should take this for a spin as your main phone. Would you consider doing that? And I was like, I tell you what, I will do it for 1 month. And if it sticks, good for you.
Right.
But I took it to Mobile Congress. Like I went crazy. I was like, let's use this hardcore, right?
Yeah.
And no, I was so glad to go back to Android after a month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
again, it's EOS. It wasn't the hardware.
Yeah,
The hardware was
right.
great. I loved the hardware.
Yeah. So that's going to be something for you that if one of these Mate 30s, I mean, you really do need those Google services then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, honestly, I'm probably going to stick with the Pixels this year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they'll be close to, if not better than the iPhone 11 in terms of imaging. And we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think the Mate 30 is bringing too much more that's new to the table here. That 40 megapixel ultra wide is definitely very interesting, but I don't think that I need that level of quality in my ultra wide shots. So I think I'll stick between the P30 Pro that I still have. I'm upgrading to a Pixel 4 XL, and then having whatever else like is around that I have, which is a OnePlus 7 and Pro. I mean, and Note 10 Plus. I've got a pretty good set of cameras to play with.
And cameras are important to me, but there's some other aspects of these new
Right.
iPhones too, like the extra 4 hours of battery life on the 11 Pro and
that's
5
a big deal. And I think they made the right decision by getting rid of 3D touch and going to haptic touch instead. Nobody was using it.
I know. After they were talking about that, I actually went back to my 10s and tried using the 3D touch. I'm like, I don't really care whether it's haptic or 3D. I if you're gonna save some cost and some complications and things, fine, get rid of it. It's not gonna bother most people.
Yeah, I think for me it comes down to being an Android user and you being used to long pressing, right, on things. It's just like I'd much rather long press on an iPhone as well.
Yeah,
it just seems more logical than hard pressing.
Yeah.
I always find it so weird to use 3D touch, so I don't use it.
Press it a little bit harder.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I'd rather like hold on the button and then it, because it realizes duration is more intuitive to me than pressure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know it still does pressure with haptic touch. Like it basically measures the surface area of the finger so that it can see how hard you press, and that's how it replicates 3D touch. But I'd rather just do long press.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens with the iPhone 11 versus Pixel 4. But I'm gung-ho. I think they're going to steal that throne back. And assuming that indeed the 11 is better, I think it's only better because it has 3 cameras at this point. Like it's and that the Google phone's missing those. But I have to say the night sight looks pretty impressive, the equivalent on the iPhone.
And I think like last year, when the 10R did so much better than the other ones, I think now that they dropped it $50, I think that iPhone 11, the base model, is really going to be a big seller. Yeah,
I know. I've always recommended iPhones to people because I think they're great phones, even though they're not for me. But I think this is even better this year. Like the 10R was my darling last year, and this year, $50 less for this thing. Go for it. Like, don't even hesitate.
Yeah.
Like, if you drop your iPhone this year, no matter what, just don't bother. Just upgrade to an 11 and call it a day.
Yeah, my three daughters, with T-Mobile, they offered almost $350 trade-in on their old iPhone 7, so they're all getting very excited to get the 11s tomorrow. So.
Fantastic! Wow, that's great. That's a great deal.
Oh yeah, because if you go to Swappa, you're getting $175 to $200 for those iPhone 7s. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, the other thing that a lot of the reviewers mentioned about the camera, and really the iPhone review is really about the camera. I mean, ultimately there's a little few things like battery life and newer processors, but they're to be expected, and iOS 13 and all that. But I think the camera is the big story, and clearly the keynote Apple did really highlighted the camera. And the other thing that's interesting is the HDR plus mode, or whatever, the super HDR mode on the 11s seems to be another area where it's competing really nicely and some potentially beating the Pixel, in the sense that it's doing that semantic rendering thing where it's doing machine learning, and it's actually be able to isolate faces from backgrounds, from sky, from whatever. Huawei is doing that with the P30 on AI mode, but I don't think they're doing it quite as well as Apple. And I think Google's doing it somewhat, but I think that's going to be the big thing in terms of imaging, and their announcement on the 15th, so that they're going to be like showing us a next generation of what Apple's just shown us, basically. Right. And it's going to be even better. Because you look at the side-by-sides that Nilay took at The Verge of people particularly, and it's actually really amazing how it exposed everything so naturally and perfectly in those all Super HDR, or whatever Apple calls it, versus like the Pixel. Pixel was good, but not quite as good, it seemed to me, in a lot of shots. And now it's possible Nilay only picked the photos that he felt, were the best. Showing that, And I've worked with him. I know him. I respect him. I don't think it's his style to like try to influence us on this stuff. A lot of people think The Verge is Apple fanboys, but I think a lot of people are Apple fanboys. The reality is,
anytime you write something, they think you're an Apple fan.
Yeah, the reality is those of us who review phones have to review the iPhone, have to take into account the iPhone, and have to admit that the iPhone is always a solid choice every year after year. And, it's just a different world. It's like a parallel silo universe. And, for me, it just doesn't fit. But for so many people, it does. So, yes, of course we love iPhones. Yeah. But I don't think we're necessarily going to tell you it's better than something else if it isn't better than something else.
Right.
Last year, we all told you the iPhone XS and XR weren't up to the task. They weren't beating the Pixel 2 and 2 XL. And then the Pixel 3 and 3 XL came along in terms of imaging and cranked things up even further. And so, we didn't lie about that. I don't see any reason why these publications would be lying about the 11 beating the Pixel 3 right now. And it might change. I think Again, Pixel 4 is coming, so let's see what happens, right?
It's kind of interesting how we have these two events so close together. I mean, I wonder if there's a benefit for one of them or the other to offset, like 6 months. So that,
I honestly am pretty butthurt that Google does their launches in October, because to me, it doesn't make any sense to launch a Snapdragon 855 device that's going to have to last an entire year. So close to the 6865 or whatever the next generation that's going to be announced when we're in Hawaii in December. So I'm like, why? And then, you're going to say, well, maybe they'll ship it with an 8055 Plus, right? Yeah. That's possible, and that's only a faster chip. But at the same time, it's vexing to me, because the 3A would be like the time that the 3A was announced, Google I/O. It would make sense to announce the Pixel then, to me.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Right. And then do the 3A in the fall, perfect for the holidays. That's the reduced price one.
And it's a perfect way to, offset the iPhone that's always going to be a premium price with a affordable Google. I think it's perfect timing for that.
I mean, the 3A is such a great phone. I noticed that with the iPhone, the Android 10 upgrade that I received recently, the camera app got updated, and it lost the ability to set the white balance manually, which I do for video recording.
Right.
So I do my videos, all my unboxing videos you watch on my YouTube channel are done typically with my Pixel 3 XL, and I force the white balance to whatever I feel is closest to real, because I don't want, as I'm moving the phone around and showing more white and less white, the white balance to adjust automatically, right? Because it makes the video look crappy. And if I could set the exposure manually, I would do it too. That is something I can't do, unfortunately, because sometimes screens are too bright or whatever. Mm-hmm. But long story short, I decided, hey, they removed that feature from the camera. There's no longer a manual mode for the white balance. So I was like, why don't I pull out my 3A, which I haven't updated yet, and use that to record my videos. And I did. And so I was like, it's my first time using the 3A for, the stuff I normally do with 3XL. And honestly, I didn't notice any difference. And as a bonus, I had a headphone jack to plug my lav mic into. Right. I didn't have to use an adapter for my lav mic. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where things are at.
I like your approach, though. I think I should take your advice. I like that approach for launch schedules. Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna do it.
I know, but
I mean, what they
makes a lot of sense.
But speaking of other events, like you were saying, like the iPhone and the Pixel are so close to each other. Strangely, this year, like this is the time of year we usually call phone apocalypse, where everybody's racing to launch something to compete with Apple.
Right.
It's very strange this year because last year phone apocalypse lasts well into November. Because we got the OnePlus 6T, I think in late October, early November, and then the Mate 20 was in I want to say late October or something. Right. So this year, here we are, right? iPhone came out on it was announced on the 10th, and then we got the Mate 30 on the 19th, and then we've got the OnePlus 7T event or whatever live stream on the 26th. And then we're getting the Pixel 4 on October 15th. The question is, will we be done in 1 month? Will it just be, it used to be a Techtober phone apocalypse. Now it seems like more like Tech September phone apocalypse.
Right,
Everything seems to be happening much sooner after IFA. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because the Note used to be an IFA event. That got moved forward to earlier in August.
Totally. Yeah. What is your take on what we've seen of the OnePlus 7T so far? There have been leaks made, of course, but the OnePlus has actually come right out and shown us the design.
They've shown some stuff, yeah.
So, are you excited about this phone?
Well, it's interesting because from what I heard, and I don't know if it's been official at all, but the talk is that the regular one, we being phone geeks, we always get excited about the highest end one, but I heard that the entry level one of the 7Ts would be North American, but we wouldn't see the Pro version of this.
So it's swapped around this time.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder why that is. Maybe because they're maybe they're going to announce a bunch of deals with other carriers. There's rumors that it's coming to Verizon.
I've heard that too, and that makes sense to me if that's the case, because I think having that T-Mobile carrier launch with the 6T last year was a big deal for OnePlus, and when I went to the T-Mobile store, I actually bought one in the T-Mobile store. I have it on the little plan that they have and all that, and it was doing very well for them. And
I mean, it was fantastic. This was like a big step forward in maturity for the company, right?
Absolutely.
And look at what they've done since then. But I think it's interesting because I have a feeling that the reason we're not going to get the Pro is because we don't need to, because it's going to be the 7T is going to have 3 cameras. It looks like it from the photos. Is rumors it's going to have a 90 hertz display. At that point, the only thing it's losing is something we arguably don't want, which is the pop-up camera, right? Like we're getting a teardrop camera instead, and I'm perfectly okay with that. If you look, it's basically the P30 Pro is a teardrop camera. Yeah. So, in terms of costs, and if you're going to be playing and meddling with the operators, carriers worldwide, you'd probably want to go for something a little more affordable. So I'm on board. I'm fine with that.
I do really like. I've been using the 7 Pro for the last month. I commute on a train daily for a couple hours round trip, but I've been using the 7 Pro for watching video because with that pop-up front-facing camera, I mean, I have the best video experience ever, on that screen. Yep. And I have a case that has a kickstand to it, and I don't know, I'm a big fan of not, because I rarely use my front-facing camera anyway, so I'm perfectly fine with having a pop-up that just sits hidden, most of the time. Yep. So.
No, I don't mind it. I'm just saying that this adds complication failure modes to the device.
Well, especially when you're doing carrier launches, you want to reduce anything that the person's going to have back the carrier with a broken thing, this and
exactly.
This or whatever. So
So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think we're going to hear more than. I mean, it's pretty clear what we can expect from the OnePlus 7T, 855 plus, 3 cameras that are probably identical to what's on the 7 Pro. teardrop notch, no pop-up camera, and 90 hertz display, and probably a pretty large battery. So the best of all the worlds, I guess.
And that 90 hertz display is a great thing to have. I mean, that was, you know, I finished my Note 10 kind of conversation, but some of what take me to not purchasing the Note 10 was the OnePlus 7 Pro. I mean, I'm like, this thing is such a nice user performance and everything else. You know, I'm like, Samsung, come on, you know.
And you know, as a bonus, if the 7T is slightly smaller screen size, like the 7 was versus the Pro, then because the Pro is a massive phone in hand, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm thinking this might be the ultimate OnePlus when we get it on the 26th. So I'm excited about it. I think this is going to be cool. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. Honestly, the design looks great to me. I like this design we saw on the Mate 30 as well. I feel like it's smart and clever and, you know, all that jazz. So
although I just got my new Moment case for the 7 Pro in yesterday. Ooh. So now I'm like, oh man, now I gotta wait for Moment to build one with a round circular back camera array.
Yeah, well, we'll see. That's the problem. I feel like my favorite case manufacturers seem to always be a little slow to release what I need. And like, I need the case before the phone even exists, okay? So that like I can order it from you so that when my review unit arrives, I can put it in there, okay?
Right. And then so when you get tired of it in 2 months and moved on to something else, it doesn't arrive, you know?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, then it's too late anyway. Another phone that was announced in this past week that is really interesting, but we'll never ever see in the US unless we import it, is the NEX or NEX 3 from Vivo.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it completely gets rid of buttons. It has a volume rocker and a power buttons that are virtual. And it's got that crazy waterfall display just like the P30 Pro. So in many ways, I think that's kind of where the Chinese manufacturers are going, for better or for worse. Not quite sure. It also does have a circle type design for the camera pod, but it's a little smaller. It's halfway in between what we saw in the P30 and the OnePlus 7T and the Motos, right? So it's kind of like,
So there's no buttons at all. I mean, I see in the one picture there's a, you know,
there's a point where you can feel where your power button should be, like a little ridged spot on the edge. So you know that your power button is there, and then above it and below it are your volume rockers.
Okay, interesting.
And it's relying on the display's capacitive sensor to act as volume and power buttons.
As long as they do it better than HTC did with the capacitive.
Well, anybody, I hate to say this, but yeah, HTC messed that up. I think anyone can do it better than HTC did. Like, it's just a nightmare that that they didn't do that right. And it's just, again, it was too early. It's like, what were they thinking? Wait till you can do it right. So what's interesting about the NEX is that the NEX 3 is that, you know, it's like their flagship. It's not a cheap phone, relatively speaking. For them, that's pretty unusual. Vivo, I mean.
Vivo,
And so the 64 megapixel camera is interesting because it's, I think that's Samsung sensor. And so what it does is it has pixel binning again, and that's how they get the really good low light performance. So the output of that camera, if you divide, 64 by 3 is what?
What'd you say, 64 by 3? 20.
Yeah, no, but it's not by 3. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But I didn't get a chance to read up on what the camera exactly does. But
do you usually get hold of these, the Vivos?
Vivo and I are kind of just starting to get to know each other, but I've got a better relationship with Oppo. And as you know, Vivo, Oppo, and OnePlus are all under the BBK umbrella. Oppo just sent me a Reno 2. So I just got it this morning. So folks should stay tuned for an unboxing of this. I'm really looking forward to playing with that phone because I never got a chance to play with the original Reno.
Gotcha.
So...
And I haven't looked into the Vivos very much. Are these importable? I mean, do we see that?
Yeah, you can get them, and some versions have Google Play services. Some like the Hong Kong versions and the Taiwan versions. Oh, so I was wrong. It's not 3x3. It down samples this 64 to 16, so it's really 4x4.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically going one step further. It's interesting. And it has only has an f/2.0 camera, which is a little should be a bit faster. I wish the lens was faster. It has a 2x telephoto and ultra wide, of course, and the back. And then it has a camera, a pop-up camera.
Right.
With some, probably some 20 or some crazy high resolution selfie camera, since Asian phones usually don't skimp on that.
Right.
And yeah, who knows? It'll be interesting to see how this camera performs if I ever get my hands on this phone. But it's interesting. And again, this waterfall design, Snapdragon 855 Plus, I think, on this.
I think so.
So it's like they're going all out. And of course, AMOLED in-display fingerprint sensor, all that jazz. So yeah,
nice.
Good times.
Yeah.
So I'm always on the lookout for those Chinese phones because they kind of give you an idea where things are headed.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. There'll be some of those things will show up later in these other phones, So.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see very soon the first phones with under-display cameras, and that's going to be exciting. And of course, probably even crazier bezel-less designs. That
I'm not a fan of that.
Around, how about? Are you ready for this, Matt? They wrap around all four edges.
I'm waiting for that.
You know what's gonna happen.
The camera's up at the top. It rolls around and it does this, and I don't know.
And you're gonna see displays that wrap around the back, like that start at the bottom front, and then go all the way to the top front, and then roll around the back, and then you have a little notification area. The 1/3 of the top of the back of the phone is display as well. I think there was a Samsung. There was a Samsung patent for that.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
So. I hate to tell you, Matt, very soon you and I will be in our front yards on our rocking chairs yelling at clouds because we'll be like, oh, these kids today with their wraparound screens, we hate it. Be ready for that. It's going to happen.
Okay.
Right?
I don't want to accept it. That's one thing that's nice about the iPhone is they don't have the wraparound screens. It's very easy to hold on to. And I think that's driven for the iPhone by the case manufacturers because of the accessory market for the iPhone is massive.
I think it's inevitable that the future phones will be completely wrapped in displays.
Yeah.
And imagine you pick up your phone, we don't have to worry which side you're looking at. You're just looking at it.
Yeah.
The camera is all embedded underneath the display, and so you don't have to worry about that anymore. And the Vivo phone, this Nex 3, has a super flash charge, which is like, Oppo has their VOOC charge, and I don't know what OnePlus calls theirs now.
Warp charge.
It used to be Warp, but now it's something else.
Oh, is it something beyond Warp now? I don't
know. No, you're right. It was something else before that.
There was Dash, and then there was...
Dash, that's right. Yeah. So they went from Dash to Warp. Oppo is VOOC, VOOC, VOOC. And then there is super flash charges is Vivo. So they're doing 44 watt, 11 volt, 4 amp, single cell. So they're, unlike Oppo, who's now doing dual cell, I don't know if you know about this. This is crazy. I have an R17 Pro from Oppo that they sent me just in time to go to MWC with. Mm-hmm. That phone has 2 batteries inside.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Instead of a single cell, it's 2 cells that are in series, and they charge the cells separately at the same time with high current, high voltage.
Interesting.
And it is something like a 65 watt charger, and it charges the entire phone in like 30 minutes from dead. It's insane. And the charger, get this, the brick is the same size as a MacBook brick. Okay, the small MacBook brick, not the big one. But you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. Yeah. But it's like, hey, we get bragging rights for the fastest charging because we charge 2 cells in parallel. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the thing that, again, when I talk to iPhone users, they just have no clue about fast charging. Finally, the iPhone 11 Pro comes with an 18 watt charger in the box.
18 or 15? Yeah, 18.
15,
yeah, 18. I think you're right.
Anyway, finally catching
right?
up
You don't have to pay extra
everything
for that.
else.
Jeez.
Like 18 is commonplace now on Android phones. Like that ZT Axon 10 Pro that I told you guys about. That is coming. It comes with an 18 watt out of the box, and it's a tiny, light, and flimsy feeling 18 watt charger. You're like, I don't even trust this thing to be 18 watt. But it's so commonplace on Android now to have fast
absolutely.
charging that iPhone users just have no idea because they're all using that stinky little 5-watt
That little
cube.
teeny, absolutely.
And then I show them how, like, I put my Pixel on the Pixel stand, and it charges faster wirelessly than their 5-watt charger.
Because I think the new iPhone 11 still comes with that dinky little charger. I don't think that gets.
Yeah, why?
I don't know.
I know at 650 we can't complain, but come on.
Yeah, it's the little things.
Yeah, no, not 650, 700. But still, like $700. How much does it cost to make one of those? Especially if you're Apple. Like, you can probably like in the quantities you make them, it's probably a 10-cent difference per phone.
Well, yeah, because then they sell the spares for $39 or something anyway.
Oh,
so,
Jesus Christ, Apple. Oh, anyway, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not going to buy an iPhone simply because I don't really want to spend that kind of money, but I would really love to play with one, and I'm hoping that someday one of my friends can lend me theirs for a day or two.
Yeah. I'm getting it just because I'm on the T-Mobile Jump on Demand. I figured I finally gave up the fight a couple years ago and figured, I just want the ability to just bounce around. I could bounce every 30 days if I want, so I just pay monthly and.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Why not, right?
Why
Like, why not do that? Yeah, sure. I think this is going to be a pretty exciting month. We're going to have, maybe we'll get a Note 30 review in it, 30 Pro at some point, where people are going to start getting the iPhone 11s, tomorrow, right? Is that when they're shipping to customers? Tomorrow being Friday, the 20th of September, in case you're listening to the show at a later date. And then we're going to get the OnePlus 7T at some point in the next couple of weeks. We should be getting devices, I would expect.
Yeah, what's their record for, when they have an event? Do they ship like in the next 2 weeks after that event usually?
Oh, yeah. Usually I think they make it available to customers really quite rapidly after that. Sometimes day of, I think.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Pixel 4, is going to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we're going to get more than Pixels at that event. So there'll be all kinds of Nest home products. Yeah. Oh, I hate that branding, Nest. Yeah. Google Home just seems to be so much nicer. I don't know.
I know.
And then, so what are you looking for the most towards getting your iPhone 11? And which one did you get?
I got the 11 Pro. Last year when the T-Mobile Jump on Demand, I tried all three models of the iPhone because I wanted to see which was best for me, and I just cannot get over that 5.8-inch design. So I'm not jumping around this year. I just went right for that one. And
that's your favorite, right?
Yeah.
It's the most manageable.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a Note 9 still in your pocket, right?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I get that.
And then,
makes perfect sense.
I know a lot of you folks, especially you too, talk about the Pixel being so great, and you know what? I think I'm going to buy a Pixel 4 this year.
The Pixel is very flawed. I've talked about this on the show. I've said this before and I'll say it again. To me, it's partially, in great part, it's Stockholm syndrome. Okay.
Yeah.
I've gotten used to my captors, and they're not so bad. It's like, I think the problem I have with the Pixel is the hardware. It's just not competitive, especially when it launches in October with this year's chip, like every year.
Well, yeah, and you compare it to what's going to be announced with the OnePlus right just before that, right?
Exactly.
With the latest processor, the 90 hertz display.
But then I use it, and I'm like, it's kind of like the iPhone. It's the user experience that keeps me coming back. Like things like, showing the songs that are playing on the notification screen, having, this incredible camera experience, having, this really deep integration. Since I'm a heavy Google services user, it really does make sense to me. And portraits that are so amazing, selfies that are so incredible. Yeah. I've lately been taking photos of my review photos of my phones in portrait mode on the Pixel.
Yeah.
And it's honestly easier for me, and I get better results than using my NEX Sony, mirrorless camera.
Yeah, I kind of came to the realization last fall when we took a family vacation, and we started in Boston and went down to DC. So we passed through 9 or 10 states, and I took a family. I have 5. I have my wife and 3 daughters. We took family photos with selfie in every state, and I was like, "There's no other selfie camera that could compete with the Pixel 3 XL. I was just blown
It's
away.
insane.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm not a selfie person, but I have to admit that I do like taking portraits of people, and with a rear camera. And wow, does that ever deliver?
Yeah.
And the portrait mode turns out, because it's not just faces, that you can take really great photos of products. So if you hold a phone, at arm's length in your one hand, and you grab the Pixel and you use it like you would like your camera for basically taking product shots, you put the camera, the Pixel, in portrait mode, and it takes gorgeous photos, natural bokeh, and it does a very nice job at outlining the phone because the phone is pretty sharp edge. And it's just great. I'll put it in the show notes, but I just reviewed this. It's not really a review. It's more like an experience story on Android Police. I took a cheap Chinese, not cheap, but affordable Chinese, a rugged phone to Burning Man with me. And it worked like a champ. And so I wrote a 1,000-word story for Android Police. Just check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. And if you look at the photos I took of that device, they are all taken with the Pixel 3 in portrait mode. And you'd think they're professional, like DSLR grade photo shoots. It's amazing.
Nice.
They're so high quality. So I'm starting to get to the point where I have a bunch of cameras that I love, like my old Sony APS-C Sony NEX mirrorless. I have a Fujifilm X30 that I really like. I have played with the Sony RX100 point and shoot series, which I think are really fantastic, especially the latest one, the Mark 7, has a microphone input now, and a flash, and an OLED viewfinder in addition to the normal display viewfinder. So it's got all the goodies. Yeah. But when I see what I can do with my phones, a P30 Pro or Pixel, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, should I bother? Yeah. And as I said, the hardware bothers me on the Pixel because, take my Pixel 3 XL, right? Incredibly ugly notch, lots of bezel. At least the display is decent. Snapdragon 845 in October last year, meaning it lasted 2 months before it got replaced by a better chip. So I've got like a processor that feels really dated now. But the worst is 4 gigs of RAM. 4 freaking gigs of RAM, Matt.
Yeah. I know.
It's unbelievable how many times I'll be in the middle of I'll be tweeting, right? And I'll be typing a tweet in, and I'll go swap to another app like an email or something to look up a reference for my tweet, and I go back to Twitter and Twitter's restarted. Yeah. And guess what? It didn't save my tweet. I just wasted like a minute of my time typing this tweet in. Right. And I have to do it again. Oh my God, like this is the kind of nightmare I'm talking about, right? It's one thing if you're listening to a podcast and it stops the podcast, because you can always go back to the podcasting app. It remembers where you were and you can continue. And it's just annoying. But when you actually lose work, right? Because memory management decides to go in and go, I need RAM to run Chrome. Yeah. I'm going to kill Twitter. Boom. Yeah. It's sad. It's just sad. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll see. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'll see.
I mean, what I'm saying to you is I think you should, if you are going to, I'd say wait to see what the reviews say in terms of the camera.
Yeah.
I actually think this phone is going to have a lot of bezels again, but I think that, it's potentially going to at least bump things to 6 gigs of RAM this year. Right. And I think Google has gotten enough feedback from all of us journalists that really love their product that we don't feel that hardware is competitive. Hence, it looks like they're adding the ultra wide finally. Right. But like they should have done that last year. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's like Apple finally just, I felt that this year they were like, okay, we really need to have 3 cameras on our top device because that's what everybody has, right? I played, Matt, this is incredible. I played with the Xiaomi Mi 9T. Have you heard of that phone?
Yeah.
$350, Snapdragon 730, triple camera system in the rear, including that incredible IMX 586. I think it's the 582 version, which doesn't do 4K at 60 frames per second. It's the only difference. But that phone for $350 is insane. It is everything you'd want in a phone. It is absolutely outstanding. And yes, it's a little heavily skinned, but you put a new launcher on it and you're good to go. Right. Will it get updates? I don't know. I don't care. At that price point, I don't care. It's like, if I see that the hardware versus a Pixel, it's like it blows the Pixel away in every way. If Google could give me that phone for $500 or $600 or $700 even, with, a Snapdragon 855 Plus, and apply their great camera mojo to these 3 cameras, it would be a killer phone.
Yeah.
It'd be super competitive. I just don't understand why they're not doing that.
Yeah, it's very interesting to pursue that further down because, in the old days with the Nexus line, it was started out as kind of developer and then it's progressed and progressed. Where are they really focusing now? Because it's obviously not on the highest end hardware. It's on the software and services.
I think this year we're going to see. I think the last 3 Pixels were definitely under-spec'd in terms of hardware for their time, and I think that Google. I'm hoping, but I feel very positive, and I think that Google will have seen that this is wrong, and they will, they will actually remedy it with a little more competitive hardware this year. Still not perfect, but again, I come back for the great software experience, and it's unbeatable. And the fact that I got my version of Android 10 right there, the first day it was announced, and I love it. Yeah. It is so good, Matt. It is so freaking good. I don't know how to explain this to you, listeners, without you trying it out for yourselves, but do yourself a favor. Get a phone that can run it sooner than later, because it is a massive improvement over Android 9 or anything before it.
Nice.
And it's all subtle detail. It's all little things. The dark mode is amazing. It saves battery. The other thing that I love about it is I now have my 3 buttons back, Matt. No more pill. I can turn that off. I'm back.
You're a 3-button fan, huh? Oh, okay.
I'm a 3-button fan. Again, I'm going to be on my rocking chair in the front lawn very soon yelling at clouds.
I don't know. I've been using the iPhone 10 so long that I've gotten used to the gesture experience, and I don't mind it having that on the Android phone.
No, I don't mind it on the iPhone because it's done right. Yeah. But I've seen some implementations of individual Android phones that was a good implementation. But in general, I feel that it hasn't been as good. Okay. And certainly Android's pill thing hasn't been as good.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can turn it off now is a huge deal for me. And again, it's I'm not a big software person. I can buy a Mi 9T and be happy with it, even if it doesn't get updates. I put my own launcher on there and my own keyboard on there, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, there's something special about particularly Android 10 this year, but about the experience that Google brings to the Pixel, the tight integration of the hardware and the software, that's very Apple-like. And I think that of all the Android players right now, they're the only ones who achieve that 100%.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
And that is why you should buy a Pixel.
Okay.
It's the experience, the updates, and the camera.
Yeah.
And the rest of the hardware, you're going to have to suffer a little bit.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
And so the question is, do you buy that or you buy Mi 9T, right? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough one because both of them have really, really great strengths. But when will the Mi 9T get its Android 10 update? Probably not another 6 months at least. It's terrible. Yeah. Anyway, we should wrap it up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, like social media and stuff? And also, obviously you write for ZDNet, but anywhere else, your podcast, whatever?
Yeah, I'm Palm Solo. I got it back. I was stolen from me for a while, but my numbers took a huge hit. I was right on the verge of 10,000 followers, and then it dropped, and the guy took everybody away, and I built it back up to about 3,000 now. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at Palm Solo. And then Kevin and I do the weekly podcast, the Mobile Tech Roundup podcast. So
it's great. You should listen to it, folks. It's a good one. And of course, you write on ZDNet on a pretty regular basis, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And that's it, folks. You know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgrl. That's TNKGRL on both Twitter and Instagram. A good place to engage with me about the podcast is on Twitter. You want to ask me questions, you want to make comments about the show. I always post all the shows on Twitter, so just reply there. Also, Instagram is where you'll find photos of phones I'm reviewing and photos taken with phones I'm reviewing. It's a great imaging platform. I really enjoy it. Same handle, TNKGRL, like the comic book character without the vowels. Also, my YouTube channel, Miriam Jouar. So it's youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. And Miriam Jouar is my full name without a space. If you look on my Twitter account, you'll find my name spelled, but you'll have the space. So just remove the space and put it in the URL after youtube.com and you'll get to the YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is basically a bunch of additional content, visual content to go along with the audio content of the show. So, unboxings, hands-on, that kind of stuff. subscribe to the podcast. It's mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major platforms: Google, Apple, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Spotify, TuneIn Radio. Please join the party. And, if you're on the YouTube, just comment there and like the videos, tell your friends, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know what to do. I want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible.com has been with us for many years sponsoring the show, and they're pretty awesome. If you like books, but maybe for some reason you're not able to read books on paper or e-paper, you might want to listen to them instead, and they're the platform for that. They have a great selection, lots of books read by the authors and that kind of stuff. Really fun. I love it, and I would recommend you check it out. And in checking it out, you'll support the podcast, which is really great. There is a link in the show description below that'll tell you how to join, and that's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. So if you click through there and join, you'll support the podcast. You don't have to stay if you don't like it. It's 30-day free trial, but you get to keep the books that you listen to while you're on that month trial, and you support the show. So consider clicking through, and we'd appreciate it. And I appreciate you, Matt, for being on the show again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Miriam. I appreciated it. And best of luck with this crazy rest of September.
It's going to be rough. You're going to feel it too. So I think we're on the same boat. But stay tuned. We'll have a show next week. We'll know more about the OnePlus, and so we'll probably discuss it in more detail. So until then, stay tuned, everyone, and cheers.
Goodbye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.